Everybody joining me this week on the Phillip Jordan Show. I'm joined by a good friend. I think it's maybe the first time in a while he's been on here. We're going to talk some Troy football. Josh Boutwell. He's all over the place over at the Troy Messenger, sports editor, Troy beat writer. Josh, I appreciate you taking the time on this Wednesday afternoon to come on the show.
It's my pleasure. Anytime.
Oh, yeah. Ready to talk about the Troy Trojans. A well-defended Hail Mary away from being 4-1 on the year so far. I'm sorry, Troy fans. Look, I'm one of you. I'm one of you. I'm a big supporter of the Troy Trojans. They're always one of my favorite teams to talk about. Oh man, but it's been a good year for Troy. At 4-2, they would be 5-1 if it wasn't for that. Obviously, the Ole Miss lost two as well. They're 2-1 in the Sun Belt, so it really has been a really good start so far for the John Summerall era there, Troy.
Yeah, about almost really as good as could have been expected, minus that one play. They've been really out, especially the last 3 weeks, been really outstanding. The defense has been as good as we thought they were. I think the big thing coming in, last year and last couple of years, when things would go bad for Troy, it would just kind of snowball and it would get worse and worse. I wouldn't say they'd lay down, but it would kind of that mentality of here we go again. And we've seen the complete opposite of that this year, and that's been kind of one of the bigger things.
Yeah, and of course, let's talk offense right now. The quarterback play. You look at it. I think I see a lot of sometimes Troy supporters are not overly critical, but a little, the quarterback play, but mostly interceptions by Gunnar Watson. I've always liked Gunnar Watson. I think he's a good, steady quarterback for you. And you got Jarrett Dagey. I read the pronunciation on the depth chart this week. Made sure to get that right. He has been solid last couple of weeks when he's been playing. But if you look at the number, you take away the interceptions, they're second in the Sun Belt in passing yards per game at 315. It's been the running game that has struggled. What has been your takeaway just watching these quarterbacks? Like I said, Gunnar Watson's, and both of them are listed number one on the depth chart this week. If you follow Josh on Twitter, you would have seen that. That's where I saw that. But what's been your takeaway of the quarterback so far?
Gunnar, until the injury, Gunner's been absolutely stellar in my opinion. He really got stronger every week, really.
Mm-hmm.
I think when he went down, I want to say he was leading the entire country in second half yardage, which is pretty outrageous. But the crazy thing with Dagey is coming in so late to have such a grasp of the offense that he has right now is really impressive. Like it really is. It's in my opinion that Gunnar is still the guy, and I think that Dagey having that option behind him is, it's invaluable. Like it really is. We've seen that there has been almost no drop off since Gunnar went down. I think last week Dagey had one questionable throw where he tried to force a throw in the end zone. It was an interception. Other than that, he's been absolutely stellar. Like you mentioned, the running game, the first several weeks, it just nothing was going. But this is another difference we've seen this year. Last couple of years, they would maybe put a little bit of effort in the running game, but when it wasn't working, and they just would abandon it completely. We have not seen that at all this year. It has been a steady attempt to get that going. And the last, I think, three straight weeks over 100 yards rushing, and Kamani Vidal and DK Billingsley have really been rolling. That's just going to help the passing game even more.
Yeah, and this past week against Southern Miss, 27-10 victory there, which it did early on look like we'd have an interception contest between the two quarterbacks, both for Southern Miss and for Troy there. But they did. Vidal, he had 79 yards, and Billingsley had 32. So you're right. So they got that running game going. They both had a touchdown a piece there, but the receiving core, and obviously they took a hit this past week. Jabree Barber, Dothan product, go Wolves. He got injured in the game. He was going in one of their top receivers. He's 25 receptions, 351 on year, 2 touchdowns. Obviously got Tez Johnson there, who's the big play guy, 21.4 average yards per catch, and you also got Deshaun Stoudemire, who's solid there as well. More looks like a possession receiver, but with Barber going down, how do you see that impacting the Trojans?
The thing with Jabree, not only is he a really good receiver, but if you talk to any of the players or any of the coaches, they will talk as much about him as a person as he is a player. And I think that's a big hit to have a leader like that go down. But overall, Troy has so many weapons there. I think we've only seen them kind of scratch the surface with it. And that's the thing about Dagey is I think he spreads the ball around a little bit more than Gunner does. Gunner has a really, really, really good connection with Rajay Johnson and Jabri and Tez, but Daggy spreads around more. We saw last week Marcus Rogers got involved a lot more, and in the next 2 weeks probably DeAndre Lewis starting tight end is going to be back, which is going to be big for that group too. It's going to be big to spread the ball around. I think it's going to be a big thing right now with Jabri out.
Yeah, absolutely. They do have a bunch of solid players around them. Defensively, as you talked about, going into year we thought was unit be good. This is a really good unit. They're once again first in sacks in the Sun Belt. I mean, I pity any quarterback going up against this team. And Carlton Marshall, he's 52 tackles on year 4 from Sun Belt, which he'd probably be first if he hadn't missed that one game. And of course, they're looking for that chase for him. With all-time tackles. What's been special with this defense? I know last year you covered this team as well. What you've seen from this year, last year, what's different under the new coaching staff, if you've seen anything with this defense versus last year?
I think the depth is that's been the thing. We know they were pretty deep for the most part, but I just think the depth overall on the defense has just been really eye-opening. There's been a number of injuries there, and there's just been no drop-off whatsoever. When you have players of the caliber of KJ Robertson and Carlton Marshall go down with injuries and you not miss a beat, that's pretty unreal. Will Cholo has missed a game. Luis Medina's missed, I think, 3 weeks now. And Jaden McDonald, he's another one of those guys, an inside backer that's been pretty much a starter, even though he's not technically one of the first two. It's been really impressive with the depth they've had. And the pass rush is, I think, even better this year than last year. Because not only are you have Javon Solomon and Richard Jubiner, who are probably the 2 best pass rushers in the conference, without question, in my opinion. But you have Will Cholo, you have, like I said, Medina, you have Buda Jones, and T.J. Jackson has been unreal. He leads the entire conference in sacks, and I don't think anyone was thinking about him being that type of a pass rusher before this year, and that's really been kind of the standout thing. And then also forcing turnovers. We saw last week 4 turnovers. Everyone getting involved with 3 interceptions, a fumble. 2 weeks in a row, Richard Jubiner had a strip sack that ended the game. Those guys just from top to bottom are just loaded.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about Jackson's 5.5 sacks, leads the conference, and you had Jubinor, who has 4, which is 5th in the conference. And this past week against Southern Miss, which I'm still getting used to Southern Miss being in the Sun Belt. That's them and Marshall, which I love it. I love the Sun Belt getting these programs that have a history with their name behind them. Make the conference even better. But they did force the 4 turnovers, 5 sacks, 8 tackles for loss. And you're just kind of looking at that game. Defensive struggle early, but that was a game, I think, in the second half, the Troy offense really did. They did pick up a lot there in the second half of that one.
Yeah, without question. And they've been really a second half team this year. Really, I think starting fast has been something that Summerall wants to concentrate on right now because there has been some issues, not necessarily every week starting disastrously, but there's been a little bit of a slow start where maybe there's a turnover early on or a drive that stalls out, and they really want to try to match the second half intensity they've had to the first half.
And something I like about John Summerall versus what they were under Chip Lindsey, 2 things. They are a tougher team, I believe. They're more physically and mentally tough than they were under Chip Lindsey. And you know what? And Summerall is a guy, I can tell he fights for his players. You see him on the sideline. We saw it against Ole Miss. He gets intense. He's going to fight for his team. He's fighting for his players. And I'm not saying Chip Lindsey didn't love his players. Every coach is different with their personality. But I think when you are a player and you see your coach really fighting for you like that, and like he did, maybe went overboard in that game, but you've seen in other games, he has that intensity, almost like he almost looks like he needs to get on the shoulder pads and go out there and play. I think that's 2 big things I've seen a difference for Troy also this year than they were with Chip Lindsey. I mean, what are your thoughts on those 2 things that I'm kind of seeing?
For sure, I agree with you. The players even talk about it when they see him having those outbursts. Like, it makes them feel good because they know they can't say certain things to the referee, and maybe Summerall can't say them either, but he will, and he's not going to get in trouble from the coach saying it because he's the coach. Yeah, and I think your players really take on the personality of the leader, and I mean, there's not many coaches as fiery as John Summerall, and it's definitely been a positive for the team. Also, Carlton Marshall being more of a vocal leader this year, I think has been a big thing, big help too.
Now looking at this Saturday, which they'll play 2:30 on ESPN3 against Texas State. I looked at the line here. Troy's a 16-point favorite going into this one. Just Texas State, and they beat Appalachian State 36-24. That game was not that close.
No, it wasn't.
App State put a lot of points up in the second half. I mean, it was 30-3, 24-0 at one time toward the end of the first half. I was surprised. I was keeping up with it on my phone, the Sunbelt scores. I'm like, whoa, does ESPN have something wrong here? How surprised were you seeing that result?
It's pretty sad to even say I was surprised at all with the way the season is going. But yeah, that did shock me for sure. But I mean, every week it seems like this happens. Like, you cannot look past a single team in the Sun Belt. You just can't, because we've seen every single week this happen. We've seen not just amongst other Sun Belt teams. We've seen Power 5 schools get their brains beat in by certain Sun Belt teams. And if you come in thinking this is just an easy win we're going to coast by on, you're going to get sadly mistaken on that. And so no, I was surprised, especially because App State. You don't really expect those types of letdowns from App State over the last probably decade or so. But yeah, it was unreal.
Yeah, they did a good job, and I rewatched the game last night, the Texas State App State game. They did a good job of one. I feel like App State was stuck on inside their own 20 a lot of the first half. Yeah. They couldn't run the ball. They were long distance on that, and they did a good job. They held App State to 53 yards rushing. And I always forget Lane Hatcher is their quarterback because, Josh, I remember covering a Camellia Bowl before COVID. Him playing for Arkansas State, I'm like, really? I mean, he's like the Stetson Bennett of the Sun Belt. He's been in the conference forever, but he is a solid quarterback for them. So they've got some good pieces over there. So what are your thoughts with Troy matching up with Texas State this Saturday?
Yeah, no, there's probably going to be a lot of Troy fans maybe that don't know that Lane Hatcher's the quarterback. They're going to hear that name, they're going to go, oh God, because I mean, he's probably one of the more accomplished quarterbacks in the Sun Belt. It just wasn't with Texas State; it was with Arkansas State. I think the pass rush is going to be extremely important. Getting to him, putting the heat on him, not making him uncomfortable. I think that's going to be probably the biggest factor. Not turning the ball over too as well, because Texas State kind of lived off of that last week as well. And establishing that run, establish the run, put the heat on the quarterback, not turn the ball over. That's the big things.
Yeah, real quick, I misspoke. They only had 53 rushing yards. They held App State to 41 yards rushing on there. Just kind of not much of a difference, but internet, you say the wrong stat, some people will jump all over you. And he's thrown for almost 1,500 yards this season, 63%. But I did notice he's got 7 interceptions on the year. So Troy's good at causing turnovers, and he's kind of quarterback that may throw into a bad situation for there. So it's going to be interesting. The quarterback deal for Troy, who we're going to see. I think that's good gamemanship too by Summerall too. If you don't know, if you got that question around your quarterback, I would use it, because then you do make. I mean, while both these quarterbacks are pocket passers, still they have differences with both of them, with Dagey and with Watson. So I think that's smart by any coach not to name. This is like at Alabama. If I'm Nick Saban this week, I'm not telling Tennessee if it's going to be Bryce Young or Milroe. We think it's going to be Young, but still, I think any coach doing it. I think that's good gamemanship.
Yeah, for sure. It makes my life a little bit more difficult, but I mean, it's understandable and probably what you should do. I mean, you don't want to. Why give the other team a heads up? Even though, I mean, it may be a little bit different. Daggy's a little bit more mobile than Gunner is, so they do a little bit of read option with him in there. We saw that a lot last week. So that's a little bit of gamemanship there, but I mean, they're not entirely different. It's not like Bryce Young and Jalen Milroe, where they're completely two different quarterbacks.
Yeah, absolutely. So put you on the spot. Who wins on Saturday?
Between Troy and Texas State?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have Troy. I think Troy's going to be able to kind of control especially with the defense, control the game. I got Troy on that one.
Yeah, I do too. I think Troy's going to win the game. I don't think they're going. And being at home, and it's homecoming. It's a big Saturday, which I did like the throwback helmets this past week. Those were nice.
Look, Troy's uniforms this year have been sweet. I love the black on black. That was probably my favorite so far. I really like that.
I've been on uniforms as a traditionalist. Like, I get aggravated with Oregon constantly in the new jerseys and everything. It just looks ridiculous. But Troy's throwback and alternate uniform game has been really good this year. I really
good.
like theirs. So
Yeah,
I'm a
for
hard
sure.
guy to impress on that, Josh. I'm not big on the alternate uniforms, but if I like what you're doing something good. But the rest of the Sun Belt, we said, and this is the best game in the Sun Belt on paper this week. I mean, we'll probably see some craziness, but another team, Old Dominion, 2-3, playing 6-0 Coastal Carolina. And you know what? Sun Belt's getting a lot more national television this year. You get
Yep.
this is Wednesday coming out on Thursday, so we don't know who won between Marshall and Louisiana. But that's a national game on Wednesday night. You've got this
Marshall
game.
won.
Well, okay, so if that happened, Josh, we're going to have to start kitting you up for lotto numbers and stuff like that if you can, predict the future that well. And then, of course, there will be an NFL Network game with South Alabama this week. So I think that's cool that Sun Belt's getting more national recognition when it comes to television, not just the streaming services. Sure. But it seems like you got to go to Coastal Carolina in this matchup with Old Dominion. Coastal's a 12.5-point favorite. They got Grayson McCall. I like Coastal Carolina. Who do you like?
Yeah, I do too. I think Coastal is probably one of the better Group of 5 schools out there right now. They've proven it every week.
So you got number 25, James Madison at 5-0, which, of course, this team cannot go to postseason. It's just the ultimate spoiler team here through the whole season with all that stuff. I don't like that either. I mean, just let them, but it is what it is, NCAA and rules. But they're playing Georgia Southern, who early in the year to beat Nebraska. They were looking at Georgia Southern leads the conference in passing, and that doesn't feel right to say.
No, it doesn't.
It's just weird, but it is what it is. James Madison, they're a 10.5-point favorite. Seems like Georgia Southern's heading in the wrong direction. They need a win desperately, but I'm going to go with the favorite, James Madison.
Yeah, James Madison just I kind of look at them like a Coastal. I mean, they've probably been the surprise of the new teams coming in. They are really good. They're a really good football team. And it's really unfortunate about the postseason stuff. But Georgia Southern, shout out to a Wiregrass kid there. Jalen White has become kind of their leading rusher. I'm really looking forward to seeing him against a top 25 team. But yeah, I got to go with James Madison for sure. I think they'll pull this one out. But I don't think Georgia Southern's going to get blown out for sure.
That is Delville's Jalen White.
Delville's very own.
Yeah, that's right. Because we had a Jalen White at Dothan, and you had a Jalen White at Delville. So it was always one of the things. Which one, when they would both have big games? Okay, which Jalen White are we talking about here? Oh, Louisiana Monroe 2-4. Now they do have Monroe. Everybody, don't say Lafayette, but you can say Monroe when the Louisiana schools. They're playing at South Alabama. South Alabama was really good this year. I mean. You may argue that, but they should have beat UCLA, and we see what UCLA is doing out the Pac-12. South Alabama was a big favorite in this one. They're a 17-point favorite. This is the NFL Network game at 6 o'clock. I feel like we're just going with the favorites here, and it makes sense with these games. I got South Alabama. I think they're going to win and make it for a big battle next week when Troy comes to Mobile.
Yeah, this is probably one of my ones that I'm more confident about than any others. I think South's got this one in the bag. And I think, like you said, that game next week is going to be pretty special.
Yeah, so this Saturday is big for Troy to get a win against Texas State because they're in that right now where the standings are. They're in that top 3 on that side of the conference, and then you play South Alabama, which is always a big deal. Yeah. What works in Troy's favor in that game? Looking ahead, this seems like the road team always wins between Troy and South Alabama. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. And then finally, Arkansas State at 2-4 playing Southern Miss 2-3. I'm going to just say Southern Miss is the favorite. I'm going to go with the home team on this one.
Yeah, this is more of a toss-up one, but I think Southern Miss is just from seeing them in person, I feel like they're kind of on the right path. They had some mistakes last week, but they feel like a much different team than they did the past couple of years. So, yeah, I'm going to go with Southern Miss.
Yeah, so we're all picking. So there's no competition here. We all pick the same games on all of these, so it should be fun. And Sun Belt's fun. I mean, just looking at, you got Coastal, you got of course James Madison Kent, you got Old Dominion. They're 1-0 in the conference, and then Georgia State's got their weird deal. They had so many tough games early on. Then, of course, on the West, South Alabama, Troy, Texas State, as we mentioned. So it's going to be fun rest of the way, second half of the season in the Sun Belt. And Josh, I appreciate you coming on. It's always fun chatting with you, whether we're talking high school football on the other one or this one, we're talking Troy football and Sun Belt. Where can the listeners and viewers follow you online if they want to check you out?
Check us out at TroyMessenger.com. We're on Twitter and Facebook at Troy Messenger, and I'm on Twitter at Josh B. Messenger.
All right, Josh, sounds good. Appreciate the time, and I hope we can do this again sometime down the road.
My pleasure.